love you back. How devotion to our jobs keeps us exploited, exhausted, and alone. Up next in this hour about work, the architecture of the office and what it tells us about the past and future of our working lives. This is On the Media.
On the Media is supported by Indeed, committed to helping businesses hire quality candidates. Indeed's Instant Match searches through millions of resumes to deliver candidates who fit the job description. More at Indeed.com/credit. And by Sakva, offering 7 different types of handcrafted mattresses, including delivery, setup, and old mattress removal. More at SAATVA.com.
Support for KQED comes from European Sleepworks, offering mattresses and bedding made from natural materials and free of harmful chemicals. Its cotton, latex, and wool components are fully certified by one of the world's leading ecological testing facilities. Details are online at sleepworks.com. And Family Caregiver Alliance, a nonprofit supporting family caregivers in the Bay Area for more than 40 years. Learn more at caregiver.org. Hundreds of millions of dollars are raised every year to help people cope with the effects of climate change where they live. Yet only a fraction of that money goes to help communities of color, although they are more likely to suffer the consequences of higher temperatures and rising sea levels. But Donors of Color Network is trying to change that. We'll have that story on the next All Things Considered from NPR News. All Things Considered up this afternoon at 5 and then at 6 o'clock, Latino USA.
This week on Latino USA, El Chisme, why we love it, why we claim it, and why we won't stop doing it.
If you think about family gossip, it's not just chat. It's also a way of preserving something important, of reclaiming lost memories. There's a kind of oral history of the community that is authentic, that emerges from gossip.
That's this week on Latino USA. This is On the Media. I'm Brooke Gladstone. In 1975, fewer than 3 million people worked from home in the U.S., and a third of those workers were farmers. Major shifts in the economy, a global pandemic, and a few minor technological breakthroughs later, that number has surged into the tens of millions, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Nowadays, American teleworkers skew upper income and highly educated. Journalists Ann Helen Peterson and Charlie Warzel work from home. That's where, together, they wrote their book on the promise and problems of this very phenomenon called Out of Office. When the pandemic struck in 2020, the couple found themselves grappling as workers with feeling caught between all the liberating and oppressive effects of tech and design. Warzel, for instance, found himself consumed at all hours by the messaging app Slack, which, by the way, was supposed to make work easier, much like email was intended.
Back when email was first invented and codified in the office, it was supposed to kill the memo. And the memo was that cluttering amount of paper that was always being passed around, and all this time you had to spend photocopying it, etc. And so as the whole process of duplicating and replicating became easier due to the technology, people are sending tons of emails when they don't really need to. So Slack comes along and says, listen, your inbox is almost beyond saving, and organizations are wasting all this time replying to emails, and it's not instantaneous. There's still that lag time between sending and receiving. What if we reorganize the way that we work? Ergo, Slack. And Slack is not only to kill email, but it's a big part of the market. Anyhow, Slack has not killed email. I'm sure your inbox is hectic just like all of ours. What Slack did was it created yet another channel to check, another thing.
So you don't save time?
You save time in certain interactions, but people are also going to message you more frequently just simply because it's easier, or just adding things on, because people are always looking for new ways to show that they are being productive.
So long before Slack, there was another efficiency trap. The Gilded Cage of the Open Office, introduced in 1958 as an office landscape, or as I like to call it, Bureauslandschaft.
I'm so happy you pronounced it and didn't make me pronounce it.
I had to pronounce it for the audiobook. It was a nightmare.
I don't think he did it as well as you did. So I am so fascinated by the history of the open office because I think most people think that it was designed first and foremost as like a tool to torture workers, when really it was meant to make workers' lives easier. The places where it was first implemented and first designed, a lot of these were very old office buildings that as they've hired more people, you place one person in this building and then another person who should be sitting right next door to them is actually like across several office buildings. And so they decided, like, what if we completely reorganize this, put people who are working in similar sectors and similar projects close to one another to ease the communication, and then also get rid of the sort of corner offices and the hierarchies that were very standard within offices.
But there are no walls. It's so noisy.
This is important to know. The original plans had these dividers that were not like what we think of in terms of the cubicles, right? They were much more at odd angles, and there were plants all over the place to create natural sound barriers. So it's not the high ceiling open office that has become so standardized.
It's fascinating because in Germany and Scandinavia and the Netherlands, you wrote that the experience of working in the open office design was so miserable that in the 70s, local worker councils mandated their removal. But not here in the U.S. The architecture critic James Russell, you quote, said that Americans characteristically reworked the plan into something cheaper and more ordered.
Yeah, the cubicle. I think that companies realized that this was a massive cost cutter, put the corner offices back in because they were allergic to not having that hierarchy in place, and then cut corners when it came to these dividers and like the expensive plants that would have been used to group people within these larger spaces, and they just put in cubicles, which I find to be very isolating. You're like really by yourself in this open office space. It's the worst of both worlds.
Like being lonely in a city.
Yes.
You guys cited a study that showed these open formats actually created more inefficient workers. Google was probably thinking about that when it designed a new kind of workspace that was more akin to a college campus. What issues do you think the designers sought to address?
One of the founders of Google was actually trying to replicate the campus environment from, I believe, Stanford, and especially the way that the engineering students would get together, and even if they weren't working on the same thing, they would be within arm's reach to have collaboration. The space was designed to really funnel people to work in different types of environments, right? Not everyone works really well at a desk. Some people want to recline in a beanbag chair, right? Some people like to work in a really dimly lit space with a lot of people around them. Some people just simply want to work in the bustle of a cafeteria. There's multiple workspaces, but also lots of points for people to do either solo or collaborative work. And probably the biggest part was that campus feeling. And so that idea is a place where you go and all of your needs are met, and that includes social